Welcome to the deep dive. This time we're switching things up a bit. Instead of our usual research papers, we're diving into a novel.
Oh, fun! Using fiction as a source material.
Exactly. It's like we get to be literary detectives. And to help us decipher all the clues, we've got expert speaker who can spot a hidden symbol from a mile away.
I do love good puzzle, and this novel seems to have plenty. Right from the start, that opening scene, it's 4500 BCE, a mysterious island, a woman confronting a whole band of warriors. What a way to set the stage.
Talk about an attention-grabbing opening. It really throws you right into the action.
It does, and the author doesn't waste any time establishing the atmosphere of ancient magic. You've got the island drenched in rain, hinting at abundance and fertility. Then there's the chalk circle, ritualistic, sacred ground. It's all very deliberate.
It really makes you feel like you're stepping into a world where magic isn't just possible, it's woven into the very fabric of the island.
Exactly, and that line about isles of magic and monsters, it's not just thrown in there for flavor. It tells us this world has rules. A whole cosmology we're only just getting a glimpse of?
It's like the author's giving us a peek behind the curtain, and it makes you want to know more. And then there's that curse. This woman staring death in the face, and she uses her last breath to weave a curse that's both a promise and a threat.
Such a powerful moment, right? Curses in stories, they always reveal something deeper. They're not just about revenge. They show us a character's true nature, the power dynamics at play. This woman, she chooses death over submission, and her magic, it seems deeply tied to the land itself.
That connection to the land really stood out to me, too. It makes you wonder, what are the rules governing magic in this world? How does one's connection to the land influence their power?
Those are great questions, one I'm hoping we can untangle as we go deeper into this world. But for now, let's jump ahead to the present day. Meet Evie, our protagonist. She's leading this double-life, successful TV ecologist by day, but then you have those little moments like the ditch scene, the way she seems to control the dampness. It's like there's more to her than meets the eye.
It's almost as if she's trying to fit into a world that doesn't quite understand her true nature, suppressing a part of herself to avoid judgment or fear.
Exactly, that internal conflict between her public persona and her true self. Something a lot of people can relate to. The pressure to conform, to hide who you really are. It's a very human experience.
Absolutely. And the author does a fantastic job of weaving those very real anxieties into this fantastical world, making Evie's struggles even more relatable. But what really struck me was how the author uses very specific details to hint at the kind of magic Evie possesses. The ink-like quality, the way she senses the trees pulsing. It's all very deliberate, suggesting a connection to nature, to ancient practices.
It's not just magic, it's a specific, distinct flavor of magic. And speaking of distinct, let's talk about that village Evie lives in. They give off some serious suspicious townsfolk vibes. You know what I mean? It's like they're stuck in a time warp whispering about the witch house with a mix of fear and fascination. What's your take on them?
Oh, I totally get that vibe. It's like, it's more than just small town gossip. The author uses phrases like, grudges die hard, whispered in hushed tones. It creates this palpable atmosphere of paranoia, buried secrets. It's like the village itself is holding its breath, afraid of what might happen if those secrets ever surface.
The village is almost a character in its own right, wouldn't you say? And that witch house, it's not just a building, it's a symbol of the village's prejudices.
Yeah.
A constant reminder of a past they'd rather forget.
It's giving those places you visit where you can just feel the weight of history, the echoes of stories passed down through generations.
Exactly. And that sense of history, of secrets and unspoken truths, it's amplified even further in that chess game between Evie and her brother Atlas. That scene with the contrasting chess sets, it feels so significant.
Right. It's like every move is loaded with symbolism. You have Atlas, the practical one, playing with the classic chess set. And then there's Evie, drawn to stories and imagination with her fantastical figures.
The author isn't just describing a game. They're using those chess sets to show us the fundamental differences between Evie and Atlas. Atlas, grounded in the here and now, representing tradition, while Evie, with her magical abilities, her connection to the past, she embodies individual expression.
It makes you wonder if the author is setting up a conflict between tradition and individual expression, which Evie seems to represent.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
It's like we're witnessing this subtle dance between those two forces playing out on the chessboard of their lives. And speaking of foreshadowing that drawing, Atlas finds the one with the seven-pointed star and that unsettling demon face. That's where things start to take a darker turn.
What's your gut feeling on that image? Foreshadowing. A red herring.
Oh, it's definitely significant. Those seven-pointed stars are usually associated with magic, the seven classical planets.
Yeah.
So there's a definite mystical element there. But then you have that creepy demon face lurking in the background, and it throws everything into question. Could this be a hint of darker forces at play? possibly even a threat to Evie and those connected to her. It's certainly possible, and the fact that each point of the star has a unique symbol, possibly representing a specific woman, suggests a connection, a lineage that we haven't fully uncovered yet. This drawing is like a puzzle within a puzzle, and I, for one, am dying to see how it connects to the larger mysteries of this world. That drawing with the 7 points and that creepy demon face, it really makes you think about inherited magic in this world. Like, what if Evie's descended from that woman in the prologue, the one who cursed her attackers? Could this drawing be like a visual representation of that lineage?
Whoa, that's a really interesting thought, especially when you remember how the author made a point of mentioning that the curse would extend to the woman's descendants. And remember how her magic seemed so connected to that smaller island. Evie's on the main island, seemingly cut off from that power. Maybe this drawing holds a clue about how those locations and those bloodlines are connected.
And don't forget about the witch house. It's not just Evie's home. It's a direct link to that past.
Right. It's like the house itself is a character. All those little details the author uses, the way it's positioned to be as cold and dark as possible. The heavy wooden doors, the ever-present chill.
It's almost like the house itself is resisting Evie's attempts to make it a home. Maybe it even reflects the village's fear of magic. Speaking of the villagers, their reaction to Evie adds a whole other layer to her struggle.
Doesn't it? It's like they're stuck repeating the mistakes of the past. You'd think in the 21st century people would be a little more open-minded.
That's what makes the author's take on prejudice so interesting. It shows how fear and ignorance can persist through time, how they can keep those cycles of suspicion and judgment going.
And it makes Evie's internal conflict even more heartbreaking. Is she more afraid of the villagers finding out who she really is, or of her own power?
That's the core of her journey, isn't it? Will she embrace her magic even if it means being ostracized? Or will she keep hiding who she is, living half a life in the shadows?
And we can't forget about Atlas. He might not have Evie's magical abilities, but he's such a rock for her. The voice of reason in her often chaotic world.
Their relationship is really something. It makes you think about all the different ways people support each other. Atlas may not get the magic, but he gets Evie.
You can really see that unspoken language between them in those chess games. They're not just playing a game, they're strategizing their lives one move at a time, supporting and challenging each other.
Their bond is a reminder of how crucial family is, especially when you're navigating the unknown. And speaking of navigating new territory, Evie's connection with Robbie adds another interesting element to this story. The romance angle.
Oh, Robbie. He's like a breath of fresh air.
He is, isn't he? And I think the author uses him to introduce this theme of liberation. He's an outsider, not weighed down by the village's baggage. He represents a chance for Evie to break free from the past and embrace who she really is.
Their connection is undeniable. It really makes you wonder what role Robbie will play in all of this. Will their relationship survive the weight of Evie's secrets and the village's suspicions?
It's that classic opposites attract scenario. Robbie, the grounded builder, drawn to Evie's warmth and enigmatic nature, and Evie drawn to his practicality and acceptance. It'll be interesting to see how their differences either bring them closer or drive them apart.
And just when you think you're starting to get a handle on things, the author throws in another curveball. Remember that mention of the Order of Vidar back in the prologue? They seemed important, but we haven't learned much about them.
Right. That's what I love about this novel. Just when you think you're starting to understand the rules, the author adds another layer of intrigue.
I know. It keeps you on the edge of your seat looking for clues, trying to put the pieces together. And with the Order of Vidar still shrouded in mystery, it makes you wonder, could they play a bigger role in Evie's story than we initially thought? Could they be connected to that demon face in the drawing?
That's a question we'll have to keep in mind as we keep digging.
It's like we're putting together a giant jigsaw puzzle, and just when you think you've found the right spot for a piece, it turns out it connects to a whole other section you haven't even opened yet.
That's the beauty of a good story, though, isn't it? Keeps you guessing. Keeps you coming back for more.
It definitely does. And this one has given us so much to think about. Ancient curses, hidden magic, a village wrestling with suspicion and prejudice, a family bound by love and loyalty, and of course a potential romance that could either be Evie's saving grace or her downfall.
And we can't forget about the Order of Vidar looming in the background. Their true motives and connections are still a complete mystery.
They're like a big question mark hanging over everything.
Oh,
Makes you wonder if they're the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Exactly. It's unsettling. You can't help but wonder what role they'll play in Evie's fate and the fate of this whole magical world.
This deep dive has been quite a ride, but unfortunately we've reached the end of our time together.
Time really does fly when you're dissecting a good book.
It really does. But before we go, we want to leave you with one last thing to ponder. We've talked a lot about Evie's journey, her struggle with her identity, her connection to the past, her potential future with Robbie. But what about her kids? Could they have inherited this hidden magic too? And if so, how might their powers manifest differently growing up in a world obsessed with technology, a world that's increasingly disconnected from nature?
It's definitely something to think about. Will they be bound by their family legacy, or will they forge their own path, finding new ways to connect with magic in a modern world?
It makes you wonder if magic itself evolves alongside humanity, adapting to the changing times.
That's a fascinating thought. And with that image of magic changing and growing, just like the characters in this novel, we'll leave you to continue exploring this world on your own.
If you haven't already, be sure to check out the novel and see what fate has in store for Evie, her family, and the mysterious Order of Vidar. And as always, thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time for another adventure in knowledge and discovery.